Hello, everybody, and welcome back. If you're listening in again to our Human Intelligent Dialogue, thank you very much for joining us. Like always, I try to bring in different speakers with different perspectives and insights and industry knowledge that will be helpful to you as a listener and watcher of our podcast. So, my name is Edwin Mourinho. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And today I have the pleasure of having joining us here is Miss Jennifer Mayo, who I'll give here a second here to introduce herself. But I'm really excited to have her here because she's coming in from that organizational development and change perspective. She has a lot of experience in that space, and I think it's going to be helpful, particularly in this day and age when we know that organizations need to constantly change. And there's a data point out there that says 66% of change efforts fail. So obviously organizations need to do something better about that. So Jennifer, thank you. Gracias. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. So Jennifer, let the audience know where your
Yes,
background, your experience, and all of that kind of stuff in this space.
sure. And thank you so much for having me. Like, I could talk about organizational development and change forever. So, thank you for giving me this space to have this conversation because this is my favorite topic in the world. So, my name is Jennifer. And I think, like many of us, I actually fell into this work a little bit by chance. My undergraduate degrees were in public relations and marketing. So, I was going to do advertising. And then I had a second major in philosophy. So I did a lot of like symbolic logic, systems thinking, and I thought I was going to be a professor, a college professor, but no, no, no. Life had other plans. I spent a few years working in an advertising agency doing a lot of the creative work. And after that, I decided to pivot and I went to law school and became an attorney. And then I worked as an attorney for quite a few years, and really enjoyed that part. But the thing that really got me interested in the work with organizations, like organizational change, was when I was brought in by the government of Puerto Rico quite a few years ago to lead a complete overhaul of the island's planning and permitting systems. So, what happened was they had ranked very poorly in the World Bank's Doing Business Index, and they wanted to improve that. So, the legislature codified into law a reorg process for the entire island for the permitting, the planning, construction, and I was brought in to oversee that project. So, long story short, I was put in charge. And I have to be perfectly honest with you. At the time, I didn't have a lot of experience, but I was put in charge of a team of contractors to manage full IT reform, reclassify and retrain hundreds of employees, close emerge agencies, open new agencies, build out SOPs, regulations, all under a 1 year deadline and under the lens of the media who's waiting for this. So it was intense. It was a trial by fire into the organizational development and change world. And I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with it. So that's when I realized how much energy I had for this kind of work, the kind of work that asks you to zoom out and look at the big picture, but at the same time, remain deeply grounded in the human side of things. And since then, I went to earn a master's of industrial organizational psychology. I got certified as an HR consultant, as a professional coach, and got trained in organizational development and leadership development. And I've kept saying yes to the messy, high stakes projects that come my way. So that's how I got into this.
Wow, it's interesting that you say that because I always wanted to be a doctor all my life and even started in Puerto Rico in pre-med. Took a detour when I joined the Air Force and the service, and later on got into the space that I'm in today. And little did I know that there would be so many people that needed help. I was thinking the medical field to help them with their physical ailments, but so many people needing help in the workplace. And here we are today, where there's still that ongoing need. So interesting, your journey to where you got to, and my journey also, not exactly where we planned initially, but
No.
that is the way it works out. So excellent. Thank you for sharing that with me. So now,
Sure.
Jennifer, tell me something. Now, fast forward to today, what do you see as some of the emerging trends when it comes to human capital issues and organizational dynamics at play?
Yeah. So like I said, I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of work with organizations. I work a lot in within the federal government sphere, but I also have like private clients that I coach. And I think one of the things that I'm noticing when I talk to the different people in the different organizations is how much we underestimated the long tail of uncertainty. I think uncertainty is the big word right now, right? And every time I coach, every time I talk to teams, uncertainty comes up. Change isn't new. I think we all know that, right? Change is inevitable. It's the one thing that's a constant. But something about the speed and the emotional volume of what people are dealing with right now in terms of the change and the uncertainty, I think it's a little bit different, and that's what I've noticed. There's like this quiet erosion happening underneath the surface. High performers are still performing. Leaders are still leading. Companies are still trying to, work through. But the inner resources, the people, like you say, the human intelligence that make these changes possible, the clarity, the purpose, the psychological safety, even they're being stretched thin. Some people are calling it burnout, disengagement, and I read recently about these new terms, the quiet quitting, the quiet cracking. So I think it's all part of the same, right? I'm convinced that what's really going on, and I've done research on this, is that at the core, the basic psychological needs of employees are being unmet. And when I say that, I mean autonomy, competence, relatedness, and they're going unmet in very subtle ways. And in the uncertainty that they're living, their coping mechanisms and their strengths are not serving them in the way that they usually do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And interestingly enough, as I listened to you, I was speaking with someone else earlier today, and what it reminded me of is, and I mentioned it to her, was, work is the fifth cause of death due to stress. And managers, 70% of managers are saying they're stressed out, and 40% are saying, I'm thinking of dropping out of this management role.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting times for today. And it's interesting that you said uncertainty. That is the defining word for 2025 is uncertainty. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's only second to when the pandemic was here with coronavirus. Um,
Which says a lot, right? Like
yeah,
that
yeah.
that we're still we thought we were past that. And as you know, as we were working through that period of time, when we came out of that, we thought, oh, it's over, right? The uncertainty is over. And here we are, 2025, and the word is still uncertainty.
There
So
you
yeah.
go. Yeah, it's interesting. So based on, I hear you, you're doing a lot of executive coaching, you're doing obviously organizational development change work with organizations, whether with the government or outside the government.
Mhm.
What are some solutions that you're seeing or strategies that you're seeing that are making a difference?
Yeah. I do want to mention like two of the things that I'm seeing a lot before I go into the solutions. I'm seeing a lot of also in this uncertainty, multi-generational workforces, right? We have right now, we're navigating the different expectations of the different generations. So you might have, boomers and Gen Xers that do things a certain way and are used to doing things a certain way. And then you have a younger generation that has been entering the workforce, and the millennials kind of like in the middle. Um, and the expectations are different, and they're navigating the change and the uncertainty in very different ways. And what's tricky is that these aren't like surface level preferences, right? They reflect deeper values, and they reflect unspoken needs. And again, I go back to the psychological needs, because I think that's very important in the uncertain times that we live in. But that multi-generational workforce, I think, is one of the things that is also that I'm seeing a lot. And of course, we can't have this conversation without talking about technological changes. I think we're all seeing more of AI and the speed with which these things are being implemented, new platforms, new tools, new ways of doing business. And again, going back to the psychological part of it, I think it's not just, oh, I don't know how to, this is going to take over my job, but it goes deeper than that. It goes to that competence that I mentioned before. People start feeling like, I don't know how to do this. How is that going to affect me? I don't even want to tell my manager that I don't want to do this, because he might fire me. So, it's an identity shift. It's like employees, um, they're asking themselves, and I see this in the coaching work that I do, if I'm no longer the expert, what am I now? What value do I bring? Right. So that's as well. So um, in terms of recommendations, I think there's no easy answer, right? And that's why we do the work that we do, because there's not one size fits all. Every organization is different. Every employee is different. Every team is different. Um, and I go back to that psychological and emotional aspect of it. Um, all these changes are pushing us to redefine what it means to be valuable in an organization. And that's rattling people in ways that is not always talked about. And if we don't take the time to understand how people feel inside of these shifts, whether it's generational, whether it's technology, whatever it may be that's causing the uncertainty and the change, we're going to lose them. We're going to lose them quietly, gradually. Again, I go back to that term I learned the other day, the quiet cracking, the quiet quitting, where they're showing up. They're showing up to work. But what are they doing, right? What are they feeling inside? How are they getting through their day? How are they adding value to the organization? Another important theme that I'm seeing from my coaching sessions is that respect. People want to be respected. They want to be treated fairly. People are unsettled about the sheer amount of information that's out there, negative information, sometimes about their own organizations and about the work that they do, the things that they care about, their lives work. They feel, sometimes I've heard the word dehumanized, right? In the way they're portrayed. They don't feel like they have a champion. Yesterday, I was reading thousands of people getting laid off, like at Microsoft, at companies that people felt was a safe bet. They're like, oh, if I go work for the federal government, or if I go work for Microsoft, I'll be set for life. And now we're seeing thousands of people being laid off. A return to office. People, are pushing back. They don't understand. I was perfectly fine working from home. Why do I have to go back to the office? The shifts in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how those things are being perceived and integrated in the workforce. So I think at the end of the day, employees, everybody, really everybody, leaders and everybody wants clarity. They want purpose, and most people, when they come through the door, they want to do a good job, right? They don't come in saying, oh, I'm going to do an awful job today. No, they want to do a good job. They want to do what's right. But it's unsettling because of all the things we've talked about today. So you asked me for recommendations, and these are the things I tell my clients. Check the story beneath the surface. Check for the story, right? The story beneath the story. What's really going on? If someone is disengaged or reactive, don't assume that they've stopped caring. Ask them. We're all human at the end of the day. Performance doesn't equal well-being. That's another thing that I tell my leaders, right? You might be performing and your employees might be performing. What's going on inside, right? What's going to happen if you keep this up? There's burnout is real. Psychological needs, I've talked about that today. They matter. They matter. Psychological safety really, really matters in the workplace. Make space for integration. We're great at launching change. It's like somebody comes in one day, oh, I have a great idea for change. Let's implement it. And then the next day, somebody comes in, oh, I have another idea for change. Let's do that instead. So I don't think we're doing a great job in the workplace with sitting down and waiting for things to marinate. We're not great at absorbing it. We're, time for reflection, recalibration. We're just like uncertainty is making us go this way and that way. And I think that's one thing that leaders need to keep in mind. And finally, I always say this: lead with curiosity. Right? If you're leading teams, if you're leading people, no one has the full picture right now. No one. So I think it's really important to lead with that curiosity and talk to others, ask questions, not rush to answers, but instead tap into the knowledge that you have in your organization, and let's create a better workplace. So those are the things I'm telling my clients.
That's good. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jennifer, because I was reading an interesting book called More Human, and how in the era of AI, it's more about the leadership. And one of the things they say is those in management typically have viewed employees as human resource to be managed for optimal productivity, and those days are gone.
Yes.
So that's one issue. The other issue, to your point, is what I call the perception problem. And that is senior executives, and those are most of your clients, they think they're doing a great job from an effective leadership perspective, but middle managers see them differently, and the workforce sees it even more differently. So, what are you running across there? What are you finding there, particularly if you're working with senior leaders? How are
Yep.
you helping that in that space?
Absolutely. Actually, funny you should say that, because I was actually reading a survey yesterday, the results of a survey that we did recently, and it's very clear. What you just said just comes across, right? You have senior leaders who think they're doing a great job. And then when you ask the middle management, they have it's like they work in different places almost, right? Like the challenges they're facing are different. Their perception of what's going on is different. And then you go to the employees and it's like, nope, no one's doing a good job. And it's a whole new set of challenges and interpretations. So absolutely, I agree 100% with you.
That's cool. I appreciate that. So, and I know you alluded to this a little bit ago, but if there were some closing comments and pieces of advice you would give to the audience members here, what would that be? In this midst of change, in its midst of misperceptions or different perspectives, in its midst of
Yeah,
ongoing continual change, psychological safety that you alluded to,
yeah,
and
yeah.
taking care of yourself. I call it the put your mask on first, like they tell you on the plane. You got to take care of you so you can take care of the workforce, type of thing. What would be one or two pieces of advice that you would give to anyone that they may say, you know what, I want to follow up with Jennifer afterwards?
And I think, and it's not self-serving. I think as organizational development professionals, as HR professionals, as coaches, professional and leadership coaches, uh, we have a really big role to play. And I think organizations, especially in this time of change, especially with the uncertainty, I always tell leadership, engage those folks, whether they're in-house, whether you hire an external consultant, whatever works for the organization. But don't try to go at it alone, because it's big. It's a big problem. And you go to a doctor when you have a medical problem. And I think leaders need to understand that they don't have all the answers. They're not, they're not experts at this type of thing. So I always tell them, don't feel like you have to go at it alone. Get a coach, get a professional, get an organizational development professional to help you navigate, even if it is just to ask questions, just to help you navigate. So that's one thing that I'm telling everyone. And like I said before, don't make assumptions. Really talk to people. At the end of the day, people are people, and people want to be heard, and people want to contribute. So make sure you engage them in these conversations, engage them in the decision making process. And vulnerability, that's another thing that I work with my clients on a lot. Allow yourself to be vulnerable as a leader. And you don't know how many times we've had to go out there and tell our employees, we don't have the answers. We don't know. We're in this together, but we're going to navigate it together, and your input is valuable and we want to hear from you. Let's, let's navigate it together. So that's another thing I always advise my clients. Just don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As I've told when I'm teaching my MBA students, I say before you are director, whatever title you have, you're human. So be that, accept that. And to your point, you don't have to have all the answers at the end of the day. So plenty of opportunities going forward in this changing, fast-paced world. But if there's one theme I've picked up, which is why even in the era of AI, you need HI, you need human
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. What I've learned is, and as a matter of fact, a lot of research keeps coming out, what we're going to need going forward with these multi-generational workforces is more of the interpersonal people skills, what some people like to call touchy-feely. I'm like, it's not touchy-feely, it's actually impacting the bottom line, because if you have
Yep.
dysfunction within the organization, your change is going to be slow to move. And I just alluded to at the very beginning, 66% of change efforts fail. This is
Hmm.
per Gardner. So I'm not, we know we've been here before. So how do we focus on humanity? The pandemic, I think, was a tipping point where now all of a sudden people are coming out of it. And yes, we may be out of the pandemic, but now there's all this other uncertainty that's going on. And to your point of some of the companies that you just alluded to, that people would go, who would have thought they'd be downsizing in the masses? And even in the era of AI, I just saw a piece of an article that said IBM laid off 8,000 employees because of AI, and then they had to turn around and rehire them because of AI created other work. So now they needed to bring them back. So that doesn't help an organization if they do things like that. So and you and I have been long enough in the business that some of the issues that were issues back then are front and center still today. And so there'll be plenty of work to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our dialogue here with Jennifer. It's always intended to be short and sweet to the point, just to whet your appetite and tease you a little bit, touch the tip of the iceberg. At the end, you'll see Jennifer's contact information here. Reach out to either one of us in having a conversation, whether it be through executive coaching or change efforts, so forth going forward. Jennifer, thank you. Gracias for being here. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much for the invitation. My favorite topic and one of my favorite people in the world. So thank you so much for inviting me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.